So we see our bubble watch prediction here. Here's my four: VCU, Iowa State, Colorado, and Florida. If you've been paying attention and watching our predictions all season long, I got VCU pretty high in the Atlantic 10, Iowa State pretty high in the Big 12, probably higher than a lot of people. Colorado's my sleeper pick in the Pac-12, and so is Florida in the SEC. I feel like all four of these teams have a really good shot at making the tournament. I think Florida might even get in on their own, to be completely honest, because I think the SEC is going to be pretty deep. But I still lean them towards being a sleeper just for this conversation. Iowa State's going to need some work. Again, offensively is going to be their struggles. I think VCU is a great basketball team. I think they can easily finish second or third in the Atlantic 10 and find themselves into the Atlantic 10 conference if they don't win it all in the Atlantic 10 tournament, because there's always a surprise in the Atlantic 10 tournament. And as I mentioned earlier in this show and earlier in our season predictions, when we talked about the Pac-12, we think Colorado is our sleeper. There's my four, Steve. What do you think about them before we get to yours?
I really like VCU as a bubble team. I don't know that, again, I have Loyola of Chicago being the third team out of the A10 going into the tournament, but VCU's that's an interesting team. But of the four you have up there, Florida is the only one that would not surprise me if they made the tournament. Again, Iowa State, man, God, they're good defensively. I just don't see where the scoring is going to come from, or consistent scoring. I think they're going to have nights where they're going to flash some scoring from the perimeter and inside. But I mean, I think Florida, of the four you have up there, is the one team that I think they're on the bubble on paper, but I think, come Selection Sunday, I think that they're in.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. I understand. I think that's a fair assessment of my bubble predictions here. Again, I think Florida might not even be in the bubble watch as we get farther. I think they're probably my highest ceiling on this bubble predictor here. I think they might be on the bubble of not being on the bubble, if you will, kind of like being already an at-large pick. But I do think just because of how deep the SEC is, I think there's a chance that they might be a little lower than where I predict them at fourth finishing the season. I'm with you. Iowa State, I think they absolutely have to find offense. That is going to be their biggest issue. And they have great defense. They're not as great of a defensive player team like UVA, where they can control the pace of the game to have their team score lower. Although their defense is really good, they're still going to have to find that other side of the ball. That's why I lean towards them. I think they can find it enough to be able to get on the bubble. And then as we talk about Atlantic 10, I think there's a really strong chance that we will get 2, maybe even 3 in the Atlantic 10. I don't know if we're going to get 3. That's a really far stretch, but I definitely can see 2 teams in the Atlantic 10 and wouldn't be surprised if it was VCU. All right, Steve, what's your thoughts on your bubble? I see a couple teams over there that look quite surprising and some interesting teams as well.
Yeah, I try to look for teams that are being either written off too easily or have just been overlooked, where people just aren't looking deep enough at some of the teams. Yes, I have 2 teams from New Jersey. Yes, I grew up in New Jersey. Yes, I understand that. I didn't put Duquesne on here, okay? I didn't put Pitt on here or Robert Morris, okay, where I live here in Pittsburgh now. New Jersey basketball. Do I have an East Coast bias? Yeah, it's what I grew up. I mean, sure, the occasional teams came into the Garden or whatever, but I grew up watching, New York Metro basketball. Seton Hall is a team that will gel late. They lost some really, really key components. What they gained is a coach in Holloway that, as he proved, bringing the unheralded Metro Atlantic Conference St. Peter's Peacocks, to the Elite Eight. He knows how to coach. He knows how to exploit a team's weaknesses, and he gets his players to buy in. If they don't buy in, they don't play. He's a Seton Hall alum. I think that he concentrated on bringing a lot of kids from the New York, New Jersey, Philly, Connecticut area to transfer in. He brought Casey the Defo from St. Peter's, and he was the glue that kept that St. Peter's team together. Alamir Dawes from Clemson, Ferry Odukali of Pitt, and Dre Davis of Louisville three guys that played significant minutes for their teams in the ACC. So they're used to top level competition. The Big East might not be the ACC, but they're awfully close. They're awfully, awfully close. So they don't have a lot of holdovers from the previous regime, but they have local kids that grew up where Seton Hall was always a force in the big. And I think that makes a huge difference for Seton Hall being a bubble team. Come January, people are going to be snickering and say, Seton Hall, yeah, nice pick. But I think come tournament selection time, they're going to be in the conversation. And I think they have a really good chance of getting in. Now, the other Jersey team I have up there is Rutgers. And there's so much flash in the Big Ten. I mean, there's just so much talent and so many really interesting teams. People are blinded by that flash, and they're not looking at Rutgers. Yes, they lost Roy Harper Jr. They lost their entire backcourt, and that was Rutgers' heart and soul. But it should be noted that Rutgers was the worst three-point shooting team in the Big Ten. So they're going to depend on defense. They're going to depend on offensive flow. I think they have the players in place that's going to get it done. The thing I always laugh about when I read things about Rutgers is that Cliff Omoruo, and I know I mispronounced that right. Sorry, Cliff. I barely can speak my own name, let alone other people's names. But they say, well, all he can do is dunk. Well, points still, when you dunk, the points, they don't take points off. It's not a 1 point field goal if you dunk. It's still 2 points. Okay. He's going to do a good job on the boards, especially the offensive boards. So I think he is a real key. Their backcourt could be an absolute nightmare to play against. Paul Mulcahy is that point guard that you hate him unless he's on your team. So all of the people at Piscataway are going to be really, really happy that he is there. Caleb McConnell plays smothering defense. That can really help Rutgers in tight games within conference. My guess is Rutgers is going to be outside of the bubble so that they could be an NIT. Think of all the Big Ten teams, I think they have the highest ceiling, and they're going to catch a lot of teams by surprise on some nights. So that's why I have them on the bubble. I talked about Loyola Chicago earlier. I do think there's going to be 3 teams out of the A10 coming in.
Nice.
But it's all based on, and see, I like VCU in the A10 tournament. So I can see a VCU winning the A10 tournament because, as you alluded to earlier, when we were talking about the conference, there's a history of teams that, wait a minute, where did this team come from? When did they suddenly wake up and decide they wanted to play, championship caliber basketball? But for me, I think Loyola Chicago is that team. They have shown, okay, yes, I mean, they're a cute story, a small school in Chicago. They totally rebuilt the program. They have the aging nun that's in the wheelchair and always going to all the games and cheering. That's a story. They can play basketball. They're well coached. They defend well. They can shoot the basketball. They protect the basketball. They don't do a lot of turnovers. So I think Loyola Chicago, again, coming out of Missouri Valley, going into the A10, those conferences are evenly matched. Again, Ken Pom, I think, has the A10 just a click ahead of the Missouri Valley, but not by a whole lot. So therefore, I really think that transition into the conference is not going to, they're not even going to really notice it there for Loyola fans. And I really think that they could make it really tough for the selection committee to not include them and not make it 3 teams out of the A10. And my last school, LSU. SEC, as we talked about, physical, tough, hard-nosed ball. And any given night, most teams have a good shot, except for the very, very bottom of the conference, have a really at least make a game competitive. I think LSU is a team that's going to surprise people. They're going to get better, as the year goes on. Wilkinson is going to be a difference because he's so good on the offensive boards. He's going to be able to not only get, I know they call them garbage points, and I don't think that it's like with dunks. Why are you putting down dunks? If you're inside, you get the offensive rebound, put it back up. Again, the points count the same. But I think he's also going to be able to get the ball out to the perimeter by controlling the offensive boards, and I think that's going to help the LSU offense tremendously. A lot of transfers. Cam Hayes from North Carolina State. He really intrigues me. I want to say he started a dozen or more games for NC State. When you watched him play, you can see why coaches were going after him when he came out of high school. If everything comes into play, I think LSU is going to be on the bubble, and the SEC, because of the strength of the conference, especially the upper, the top 6, 7 teams, I think that could push LSU into the tournament. It might be
Yeah.
a play-in game, but I think it's going to push them because they always have those 12 seed play-in games, which I don't.
Mhm.
We have to do a show about that. I don't understand
Seating's
what.
interesting in the tournament. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, okay. I understand a play-in for a 16 seed. I absolutely understand that. Why do you have a play-in for a 12 seed? If both teams are considered for a 12 seed, then put them both in and have the teams that are 15 or 16 seeds plus to play in. But again, this is not what the show's about
Yeah.
later down the road.
I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't mind seeing any 8 of these teams play in a play-in game this year or be in first 4. I'd love to see all 8 of these teams. I'm really interested to see who's gonna make the bubble because I think and it just shows right there the fact that we can't even agree on a bubble watch, how intense and how fun the season's going to be, and we haven't even started yet.